Ahoy mates!
Hello happy travelers!
Welcome back on board Royal Caribbean's Quantum of the Seas, day number 7, our last day of our Alaskan cruise.
Last day of the last frontier.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. And if you missed it in yesterday's video, we were supposed to be stopping at Victoria, Canada today, and that has been canceled. Well, we're actually going to stop there, but just technically for 30 minutes because they have to. No one's getting off. All that. So it's essentially a day at sea. So let's go ahead and get it started. Day number 7 on board Quantum of the Seas begins right now. 3, 2, 1. 1-0, baby. Duval. Well, we got our day started in the right way, if you ask me. Room service, ordered some pizza and wings. Was able to watch the Jags get their first win of the season, which I didn't think I'd be able to do because of where we're at, but never mind. We were able to do it, so that was great. And now what are we going to do today?
Well, we thought since we've already explored the ship a lot and stuff and showed a lot of that, we thought today would be a good day, since this was our first Alaska sailing, to kind of tell you some things that we really liked about sailing to Alaska. Maybe some, not things that we dislike, but things that maybe you should be aware of, maybe some cons.
Considerations.
And then some tips about sailing to Alaska. Sunday is fun day. So let's start by talking about fun stuff about Alaska that we really liked. Fun fact about Quantum, they have very fun elevators with animals dressed very fancifully. Is fancifully a word?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I used it appropriately. That's one fancy hound.
One of our absolute favorite thing about the Alaska cruise has been some awesome wildlife sightings, like huge ginormous bears. Barry the bear!
Yeah, wildlife spotting has been fantastic. In fact, that's one of the great things about the Alaska cruise is, yes, the ports themselves are awesome, but just sailing out through the inside passage, through the different areas, you never know when something's going to come up. We have seen a ton of whales. We saw some sea lions. We see bald eagle. We saw salmon. Lots of great wildlife spotting to be had in Alaska, both in the ports themselves and when you're just sailing through. So always want to keep your eyes peeled.
In fact, I would bear to say that this is probably the most animals we've ever seen on a cruise, like in the wild, in
not even close,
in their natural habitat. You don't really see a lot of animals on Caribbean cruises, maybe a dolphin here or there, but an Alaska cruise you see a lot, and that's definitely been one of our favorite things.
And don't forget Sitka. He's chilly, so he's in his cubby. Get it? Cubby?
And along those lines, we would say that an Alaskan cruise, more so than the other ones we've been on, Caribbean, Hawaii, Mediterranean, the journey is just as important, if not more important, than the destination, which sounds cliche, but it's actually true in this practice.
It is. Like, I would say with Alaska, more so than other sailings, it's really about the path that you're taking to the ports, like whale watching and stuff while you're sailing, or, you know, when we went through Endicott Arm and you see the ice in the water as you go to Dawes Glacier. Like, it really is more about the journey than the destinations. I liked that there was so much to see and look for and stuff while you were sailing. And even though the journey was where it was at, we really enjoyed our time on shore during our Alaska cruise.
They were super beautiful, lots of great scenery to take in, lots of fun activities to do. And as you saw, we kind of had a mix of things, right? Some ports we did an excursion with the cruise line, some we went off on our own and explored, but we enjoyed all of them thoroughly. And the great part is that it was really easy to get around all of those. The furthest we traveled in any port was about 30 minutes away from where the cruise ship docks. So you really can't beat that. Getting out into nature, seeing wildlife, going on fun excursions, doing different things. And if you weren't feeling like doing an excursion either through the cruise line or venturing off on your own out and about, all of the port areas that we visited, for the most part, had a lot of stuff to do right there close to the ship. You know, Ketchikan's right in that village. You have the whole town of Juneau there. Even Icy Straight Point, as remote as it was, has that nice little village set up with all the fires and the restaurants and the whale watching from the dock. So all of those different spots, if you want to just hang out around the ship, you could do that, and there was stuff to do, or you could go off and explore. Now, those were all of our favorite things, the pros of our Alaska cruise.
Yes, and while there aren't really any cons with the Alaska cruise, I would say that there's some things you should be aware of, and that could maybe be a hindrance sometimes. But before we get into that, let's get a drink. Make
maker and shaker, make me and shake me something good. Cinderella! They have Cinderella!
Order it before it turns back into a pumpkin.
Okay, order.
Now, just like how Maker and Shaker have to think on the fly, we did as well for this sailing, because there was a lot of changes. Things got shook up, we could say.
Thank you, Maker. Thank you, Shaker. Yay!
Yes, we had a lot of changes on this cruise, a lot of adjustments along the way. We had a port get changed before we ever even left. We had a couple of port times get changed. We had a port get canceled during the cruise. We had our excursion times changed. We had to cancel excursions because those times ended up interlapping. It was all kinds of crazy stuff going on.
Now, of course, changes can happen on any cruise.
Absolutely.
Definitely, and it has before. We've just never had so many changes happen in a singular cruise before. Every single port day got adjusted in some way or another. And I do think that has to do with, like, whether it be the weather or the just the environment. You know, it's called the last frontier for a reason. It's pretty rugged. So I just think Alaska probably is more inclined to have changes happening because of those things, which, you know, is understandable, but it's just something to be aware of because, it could maybe put a wrench in your plans a little bit.
But just like with any trip, be prepared, be flexible, be adaptable. Have a good mind, good positive mindset about things, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, Cinderella didn't let a few hiccups in the road stop her. I mean, her mice became horses, for crying out loud.
Another thing to consider with Alaskan cruises is that you may be in for some rocky waves and some temperamental weather. Now, you wouldn't be able to tell by how the seas are right now, but as you saw earlier, it was pretty rocky out there and pretty raining, and that's kind of been the situation of this cruise.
Now, obviously, weather is unpredictable in any part of the world, but when you go on a Caribbean cruise, for the most part, unless you have a bad thunderstorm come through, or there's a hurricane or something like that, you're going to have decently calm seas and, pretty good weather. The thing with Alaska is, especially when you're not actually in the inside passage or going between the Alaskan ports, so when you're from Seattle up to Alaska or vice versa, we have heard from others who have a lot of experience and now experienced it ourselves that the waves can get quite rough. You can have choppy seas, a lot of wind. We've never seen them close the top deck because of wind before, and we've seen it multiple times on this cruise.
And as we speak, it is starting to sprinkle. So even though it's kind of part of the experience, though, the cold, the briskness, it makes you feel like you're in Alaska, it's just something to consider that it's going to be a different type of climate and environment.
And as we learned with the North Star on this cruise, be prepared because experiences may vary.
So, of course, things on board, like the North Star, that stuff can break or not be functioning a certain cruise, anytime. But with Alaska sailings, there is, I feel like a lot of variety you could get from cruise to cruise. Like, as we mentioned with weather, could be more raining, could have more rocky waves and stuff like that. But also, too, depending on when you go, the wildlife sightings, apparently you see bears all the time in Alaska. We didn't see a one other than Sitka and Barry.
And we even within a singular sailing, because we saw someone earlier who asked if we saw the whales out there, and we're like, yeah, we've seen several. And they're like, I haven't seen any. Wow, we've seen 10 to 15 at this point. So
just based on cruise to cruise or location on the ship, getting lucky with sightings, you may see some people and it's like, wow, I saw all these animals on my Alaska cruise, and then other people maybe not so much. So that's how it goes with wildlife sightings. But not just that, it would take us going through Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier. It's so often because of weather, the ships can't go all the way out there because of visibility and stuff like that. So that's another thing, Maybe on some sailings you get that, and other sailings you don't. So your experience really can vary from sailing to sailing.
As we mentioned, we were supposed to go to Skagway on this cruise. That got canceled for us because one of the piers can't accommodate cruise ships right now. It was, I don't know if it was destroyed, but it was at least heavily damaged by a rock slide or a landslide.
I think it's worth it to roll the dice to try to get those experiences and stuff like that, but just be aware that your Alaska cruise may look different than other people's Alaskan cruise.
We are absolutely, positively aflutter.
Why are we feeling so fluttery?
Because it's time for
Alaska Cruise Tips.
And for our first tip, we recommend that you start planning quite early because there's a lot of really amazing excursions to be done in Alaska, and in our experience they booked up pretty quickly, and a lot of them, especially ones where you go and see a glacier and you need the helicopter or a seaplane or something like that, tend to be quite pricey. So if you plan early, you can account for that and be really prepared so you can do the things that you really want to in Alaska.
And if you've watched the TA Talk series, you'll know that one of my biggest tips, in fact, my number one tip for booking a cruise, because we are travel agents, of course, is that you should book as early as possible, right? Well, that is the truest when it comes to Alaska. And I'm not just saying that, that is a fact. So we're at the end of the 2023 Alaska season. 2024 Alaska season is already getting, especially in those peak months, which of course is summer when all the kids are out. That is peak for Alaska as well, just like it is everywhere else. So you really almost have to start thinking like 2 years out for Alaska, as early as possible. Get in, get the best rates that you can, and get the room inventory that you want. So you want to jump on it as early as possible for both booking your cruise to Alaska and your shore excursions while you're on that cruise.
He's a TA and he did a talk. That's Matt, but this isn't TA Talk, just a vlog.
And as Chelsea's packing away here, as we get ready to disembark our cruise, our next tip is what you should pack for your Alaskan cruise.
Definitely pack layers. So the weather has kind of fluctuated a lot from this cruise, like high 70s at times when we were in Seattle, and it got down to like 40s when we were in Alaska. Sun, rain, windy, not windy.
High winds.
Yeah, so I would definitely pack layers from t-shirts all the way, long sleeve shirts, like fleece. I also recommend definitely bring a rain jacket and or like a jacket that is like slick to handle the rain. Definitely bring like a hat to keep yourself warm.
And pack shoes that are at least a little bit water resistant. These are my Allbirds, the wool ones. And these worked out really well for the sailing because the wool kind of repels the water, and they're high top, so that kept like water from splashing in when we were in the tide pools and stuff like that. So these worked out really good.
But yeah, just pack layers and stuff, and you should be good to go.
And the next tip we have is all about the room category that you choose. Now, I have actually heard, before we came on our first ever Alaska cruise here, I've heard a lot of people posit that they thought maybe an interior room would be great for Alaska because you'll probably just want to be up on deck all the time anyways, looking out. While I understand the logic of that, I don't actually agree with it in practice now that we have been here. My recommendation would be to go for an ocean view at the very least, a balcony if you're wanting that experience, of course, because with the changing weather, with it getting cold, with it getting rainy, sometimes you want to be able to come inside, out of the elements, and still enjoy the view. With that said, our recommendation would definitely be to go with the room category we have here, the 3M Spacious Ocean View, which only accommodates 3 to 4 passengers, or the other category of Spacious Ocean View that accommodates 1 or 2. They're all facing out the front of the ship. These are a little bit better because they're on the corners, so you can see out the front and out to the side. But we've had a ton of luck with wildlife spotting here from our window, as well as just taking in the beautiful vistas, all the mountains, the waterfalls when we were sailing through Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier, all of that great stuff. I really think you want your own private space to take some of this in. Being here at the forward part of the ship has also been great because when we have seen whales, it has given us the opportunity to run up on deck and get some great shots of them. So take that into consideration.
One of the biggest tips I can recommend for an Alaskan cruise is that you have one of these babies with you, a good zoomed camera.
We like the zoom camera because obviously we're capturing stuff for footage to share on YouTube, and just find that we can get a lot further with it. But if you don't have a zoom camera, a pair of binoculars would work fantastic as well. If you really want to be nautical, one of those telescopes like Captain Barbosa.
But really, there is just so much wildlife that you are not going to see if you don't have something to enhance your vision. The whales that we saw and everything, we maybe saw a spout from a distance, but we didn't see like them actually breach until we got out the zoom camera. If you want to see like the mountains and like search for bears and stuff like that while you're going through Endicott Arms, you really need that zoom or the binoculars to help you with that. So definitely bring something with you, because it's going to be a lot more expensive to buy it on the ship. So buy it ahead of time.
Our next tip pretty much goes against everything that we usually say about cruising, but don't worry about the ship. Don't worry about getting a fancy ship.
Now, maybe there's some consideration if you want a newer ship that has a more modern room or something like that. But when we're talking about ship amenities, which is something we usually really like to harken on, I think like we saw in Hawaii, the same thing with Alaska. You tend to be off the ship doing things important, or you're out on deck looking at different things. You're doing all these things around Alaska, and actually the activities, the entertainment on the ship become not obsolete, but not nearly as important as they might be on another cruise.
So while it might be fun to have something like ripcord, like iFly, or the flow rider on your ship,
It really doesn't matter as much with an Alaskan sailing, because it's going to be about sailing, seeing the animals, and your ports of call.
but if you do want to make time for those activities, I do recommend making sure you hit them on your sea days.
Obviously, when you're here in Alaska, you're going to go out, you're going to be enjoying all those different ports, doing those different things. A lot of them can be quite exertive too, so you might be quite tired after you've been whale watching all day, going out on a boat, driving a Jeep around, going on a hike, whatever it might be. You may feel too tired to come back on board and do different activities, and you want to use all the time you can to go out in the port and see those different places. So save those activities that are for the ship when you're on board during days at sea, because there's nothing else to do anyways. Even if you have to wait a little bit longer, it'll still be worth it. Just try to get to the activities right when they open, and you'll usually be good to go.
And our top tip with your Alaska cruise or any other cruise you go on, don't stress. There'll be bumps in the road, but don't worry about it. Just go with the flow and have fun.
All right, here we go, bumper cars, and that is going to do it for us on our first ever Alaskan cruise. We have had a ton of fun on board, and it's been an absolute blast. We can't wait to do it again. And as always, thank you for joining us. We are going to sign off today's video and our Alaska cruise. Until next time, it's off to the next one. Happy travel!